This is State Senator Rob Sampson. Senator Sampson, how are you, sir?
I am wonderful, Steve. So
Uh,
nice to join you. It's been a while, actually. I probably haven't talked to you in a month or so.
no, but a lot of stuff happening over this past weekend, and as we get close to the end of the legislative session, it looks like there's been some pretty positive moves, right? They're dropping the TCI and a number of other items.
Potentially, yes, although I won't count my chickens until Wednesday at midnight. But I will tell you that, this is my favorite time of the year. Serving in the minority, which I have every year that I've been in office, it's extremely frustrating. But this is the time where the tide begins to shift, when there's only a couple of days left and the Democrats have a mountain of things they want to accomplish. And they need to get them through both chambers with Republicans who may or may not be willing. And it's when our party can shine, and it's when individuals who are willing to put up a fight can shine. And I'm very pleased. I know I've killed a lot of bills in the last several days, and I hope to do some more damage before it's over.
Well, let me ask you about that, because in all of the reporting that I've seen about the concessions and this tax is off the table and that tax is off the table, one thing I have not seen reported on is Senator Looney's mansion tax. Is that still alive?
Your guess is as good as mine, Steve. I heard you mention it before. I honestly don't know. I have not seen a budget document. I know that there are things that are allegedly what described as the budget floating around, but I don't think that the document that anyone has seen or shared it reflects what we will ultimately vote on. I fully expected to come in today and find out the House was voting on the budget, but they're not. I heard they're going to actually take up approving a bill that would provide Medicaid coverage for illegal alien families and children, and something else. I can't remember what it was, but no budget, which is going to lock them until tomorrow, and us probably to Wednesday. And boy, they're playing with fire there.
Well, because how much time are you going to have to digest that budget? I mean, how many pages are you expecting to see?
Yeah, usually it's around 600 pages. In the last couple of years, things have been better. We've been given the budget, at least in the Senate, at least with the day to look at it. In previous years, I remember getting it, with it still, steaming from coming off the copy machine. And you're like, you want me to digest 600, 700 pages and then vote on it? The big talk is that the taxes are out of the budget. The taxes are out of the budget, and that's just baloney. So I want to make that clear to your listeners that even if there are no direct taxes that you can see and measure, there's a brand new tax on product X. Trust me when I tell you, there are plenty of taxes in there. They will be raising fees on licenses. They will be raising the charges for things that happen behind the scenes that will ultimately affect the cost of living in the state in a big way. And the way you know that, Steve, is very simple. You just look at the bottom line number. How much are we spending? Because spending ultimately is the thing that determines how much we're paying in taxes. If the spending goes up by $2 billion and they say there's no taxes, they're fibbing, obviously.
Well, that's what I was kind of thinking about when I was reading these stories was, okay, we have a $46 billion budget, and the governor's running around saying it's balanced and there's no gimmicks and there's no tricks or anything. Well, how are you covering that increase in spending if you're not adding new revenue streams? You are playing games. You're moving stuff around. You're assuming X amount of dollars in revenue projections, which may or may not be even close to the truth.
Right. There's no question that there are going to be new revenue streams and increased revenue streams in the budget. And the other thing that they're doing is, of course, they're factoring all of this federal money that has come our way, which they're going to insert into this budget to offset what would be other increased taxes and revenue streams. The sad part about that is that, that doesn't last forever. That federal money is a one-shot deal, and it will be gone next time, and we will be staring at a budget next time that has a huge hole in it from all of those millions of dollars that came from the Fed, which are our tax dollars anyway. But the state will have to find a way to increase revenue or taxes to fill that hole the next time. It's so funny, Steve. One of the things that drives me crazy in this place is that every time we are presented with a budget, they claim it's balanced and everything else, and it meets with the spending cap and blah, blah, blah. But then you look at the third year and beyond, after the budget, and there's always a massive deficit. It's like, how can you look at yourself in the mirror and say, I'm doing a good thing when I'm passing a budget that I know the next time we're here doing a budget has a massive deficit? And that's been the same way every time.
Yeah, and it's really frustrating to me when you read things like I saw last week when Speaker Ritter said that, oh, by the way, we're going to do all this and do all that. Plus, we're going to give you a tax cut through this tax credit, this state tax credit we're going to give you in 2024. And I'm thinking, wait, what? That's 3 years out.
Yeah, don't cash that check just yet.
Yeah, you can't make promises that are 3 years out in a 2-year budget. It's ridiculous. It's just absolutely ridiculous. Some of the other bills that seem to be racing toward conclusion here, the marijuana legalization of recreational marijuana. Depending on who you read, you still hear that it may have some troubles. It may not be as ready to go and kind of written already. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm actually hearing that the marijuana bill may run in the state Senate today. Which is interesting. I haven't seen the document personally myself. I hate calling it legalization, by the way, Steve. It's so far from legalization. It's regulation. The regulation of marijuana is what it ought to be called. Because essentially what it is, if you were to write a bill to legalize marijuana per se, could be one sentence long. It's we're not going to prosecute crimes associated with the possession and use of marijuana anymore. Done, period. That's not what it is. This is going to be a 100-page monstrosity. And really what it is, it's just more government. It's we're going to, come up with all sorts of rules, regulations, licenses. We're going to pick and choose who can grow it, who can sell it, who can market it, who it's going to go to, how much you can own, how much you can buy. It's unbelievable. That's not the legalization of anything to me. That's the regulation of marijuana. And of course, it's partly to raise revenue, but it's been essentially grabbed by the more progressive legislators because they want to use that revenue for specific purposes. They're not going to use it to, pay down debt or, help balance the budget in the general fund. They're going to use it for new projects. And you also have the urban legislators that want to use it for, quote unquote, equity. And they make no bones about that. And equity is another word for reparations, Steve. You're going to hear the word equity in politics grow in popularity in the coming years. And it's basically, a wink and a nod towards reparations because equity basically means writing policy that is supposed to right the wrongs of the past by creating new, quote unquote, systemic racism that benefits people that were allegedly oppressed. And I'm not discounting the existence of racism or slavery or anything like that. I'm just suggesting when I say allegedly, I mean, who knows who they're going to apply the benefits and the pain to. It's certainly not going to be based on what's fair or right or history. It's going to be based on politics.
Of course. I mean, any decision that comes out of a politician is based on politics. I mean, that's just par for the course. The other interesting part of that bill that I was hearing about this morning is that they're going to limit you to 6 plants to grow at home, 12 per household. How would you enforce that?
I don't think there's any way possible to enforce it. And what constitutes a plant anyway? I mean,
yeah. I mean, and it goes back to what you were saying. This isn't real legalization. If you're going to legalize it, I mean, nobody tells me how many cans of beer I can have in my house or how many bottles of vodka I can have in my house. What sense is there in putting together a marijuana legalization bill unless you are making the point that you only do this to generate revenue? You're not doing this to actually legalize the product. You're doing this with an eye toward revenue generation, and so therefore you don't want people growing it themselves because you need that revenue.
They've effectively legalized marijuana on a small scale anyway by decriminalizing the possession of small amounts and looking the other way. I mean, I don't know that there's anyone serving in a Connecticut prison for possession of marijuana at this point, even though that's a claim that's made all the time. I don't think it's even true because I don't think that there is any enforcement. And I'm worried that the final product of this bill is going to make the marijuana product that's available to consumers not attractive from a consumer standpoint because it's going to be more expensive than what can be obtained on the future black market, which is the only reason that anyone can make this claim that this is good legislation, because I see the only benefit for what they're calling the legalization of marijuana and what I call the regulation of it is safety, is controlling the quality of the product and making sure it's not laced with some foreign substance or some toxins or something like that. Not that marijuana isn't toxic enough on its own, But they're not doing that. They're going to make the product unattractive, and I'm worried that it's just going to turn into another huge government, set aside program rather than something that benefits the state taxpayers.
Well, I think it's obvious because if you look at what happened in California, I mean, I think something like 60 to 65% of all cannabis sales in California are still done on the black market. They did nothing about resolving that problem. You still have crime and criminals and all the things that go along with the illegal marijuana trade. They're not solving anything with this.
Precisely. And they still have not overcome the number one stumbling block of all of this legislation, and that is that it's still going to be against federal law.
Yeah.
I mean, marijuana is regulated by the federal government, whether the state of Connecticut makes it legal or not. And there is always this danger that some, force of nature, the public opinion, who knows, changes, and the winds in the federal government change, and there starts to be some sort of crackdown or enforcement of federal law regarding marijuana. And that can affect, states that have adopted these policies in direct contradiction. I mean, we do it on so many things. I mean, the Democrats seem to only like to refer to federal law or the Constitution when it suits them. When it doesn't suit them, it's, let's legalize marijuana. Let's create sanctuary cities. Let's create sanctuary state policies. Let's ignore due process. Let's, enforce ridiculous, unconstitutional gun laws. It's an endless parade of abuses. And, the theme this year, Steve, is that they are moving away from writing laws that are actually legible and clear to citizens and more subjective and put bureaucrats in charge of determining whether you are right or wrong. And that is a scary, scary thing. We are moving away from the rule of law to the rule of man. And that's something that sets America apart, is that, we treat people equally in this country because we write the laws clearly on paper and they apply to everyone regardless of your status. And that is changing. That is changing when you start to say, well, a bureaucrat will decide whether or not you made a reasonable effort to meet with this labor regulation, which is something I've seen several times this session.
Final thing, you talked about being, not worrying about the Constitution when it comes to some of these laws. The red flag gun law that is being has already gotten through the House. Is that going to come up for a vote in the Senate?
It went through the Senate several days ago.
Oh, it did? Okay, because that's great, because now we're being set up for an expensive lawsuit guaranteed to be brought that we're going to lose because just recently the Supreme Court voted 9-0 unanimously that a home gun confiscation is unconstitutional.
Yes, absolutely. Well, the thing is, we've actually had that law on the books for quite a number of years in the form of the risk warrant statute. But this does make it worse. It creates a new series of protocols that have to go into place, but less protections for citizens and no due process rights. You can have your ability to purchase a firearm taken away from you simply because some person you do not even know makes a claim against you without ever getting a day in court. And that is just fundamentally wrong and un-American.
Well, and again, based on this Supreme Court ruling, it's unconstitutional. I don't think it's going to stand up if somebody decides to challenge it.
Well, I hope you're right. I mean, the state of Connecticut has passed quite a few unconstitutional laws in its recent years, and some of us have challenged those laws in court and unfortunately failed. I believe that the governor, and we've talked about this many times in the past, he did some things very well when it comes to COVID, and he did other things that were well beyond the realm of his power. And I believe he should have been checked by the court system. And I believe the courts have failed us on a couple of issues. Number one, the determination of which businesses are essential or non-essential. And the other thing is with regard to election law. The governor did an executive order essentially, circumventing the idea that, you need an excuse to get an absentee ballot in this state. He proclaimed that anyone could get an absentee ballot simply because COVID exists. Which is in direct conflict with the Constitution. Now, I don't even object to a policy that would make that happen, except for the fact that you need a constitutional change, which is a process that has to go through the legislature and before the citizens of our state, and he did none of that.
Well, that was kind of par for the course for the past 15 or so months, and hopefully we will get to the end of those executive authorities. I know that they have been kind of watered down a little bit, but he still has that power. Do you see him extending it yet again in when they expire? I think in July.
Yeah, I would be. I want to say I will be shocked if he extends it yet again, but I shouldn't be because I was shocked the last time, and it happened anyway.
Yeah.
There is a very important bill that is still in the legislature that I believe I have done a good job and effectively prevented from happening, and that's Senate Bill 901. And people should be aware of it because that is the bill that essentially created the mechanism by which all of those absentee ballot applications were mailed out to voters during the last year's primary and general election that I think resulted in a lot of questionable activity. I don't want to say fraud. I don't know, but there were problems. People receiving multiple ballot applications and those drop boxes overflowing and not being picked up on time and so forth. They are trying to extend that through November of this year to cover the municipal election. And it's just ridiculous to me. I'm like, COVID is I don't want to get myself in trouble by saying COVID is over, but let's say COVID is diminished enough so that I don't think it's a real impact for that election. And that's November. I mean, that's months from now. And my argument has been, why do you want to pass this law so badly now, not even knowing what the future is? And it's because they want to use that system for that election in a big way, and they want to do it before COVID is actually gone.
Never let a crisis go to waste. Hey, Senator, I got to let you go here, but I appreciate your time here today. Keep up the good fight and get some rest after this session, and then we'll talk again, all right?
It's always my pleasure. I look forward to it, Steve. Thanks.